what advice or tips have you got regarding managing a WFOE once you've decided to set it up?
Right. So these are questions that I keep mentioning. Things that you need to decide right when you set up the WFOE. And you need to consult with the agent or with your lawyer or with other experts, whether it's Australia, Ostgem, or other experts in Australia. You need to discuss several questions. The issue is who will manage the WFOE. So there's several questions. Who will be the actual general manager on the ground? And it most likely would be a local person, but it could be an Australian. And you need to give him a job description to know, and you need to know what he can do and what he cannot or shouldn't do. For example, who will hold the company stamps? In China, the stamps mean everything. You can do a lot of things with the company stamps. You can do good things, you can do bad things if the stamps goes into the wrong hands. Our practice in our company, for example, we split the stamps. The CFO has some stamps, I have some stamps, the owner of the company has some stamps. Nobody has all the stamps. And this is just some kind of precautions. And you need 2 or 3 people every time to approve or to stamp or to get some processes done. And you need to think what would make sense in terms of the availability of the people on the ground, what kind of stamps needs more usage. So the stamp procedure is something you really need to think from the beginning, not to give somebody too much power that could give you some damage in the future. Then managing the WFOE is, as I mentioned already, is an art. It's not something that you let the secretary to do. Even if you have a small operation, some people say, "Oh, we have only 2 or 3 people. We'll let the secretary do the HR, the salaries, the bookkeeping, and we just use a very cheap bookkeeper." This is a bad start already, because managing HR is a challenge. You need to have the right contract in place. You need to have, first of all, to take care of the employees. You need to pay all you need to pay, the social benefits. You need to pay taxes. And from 1st of January 2019, taxes and social benefits became a major issue. There have been tax reforms that are, in a way, it's increased benefits for the employees. For the cheaper salaries, increase their salary. But for the HR managers, it gave a huge headache. They changed the system. It's very complex now. And it will take time for the HR managers to understand how do you actually deduct the social benefits, deduct all kind of expenses, and calculate the tax. I saw the tax calculation from my HR manager, and I was worried. It's not easy to understand. I try to figure out what would be my tax for this year. I still cannot understand what will be my tax. It's very complex calculation now, and it will take us time to learn. So you cannot, it's not something that you let your secretary or admin person to do with many other tasks. HR manager should be HR manager. And if you're a small company, if you cannot afford an HR manager, you outsource it to a company that specializes in HR management. Same goes for, one more word about HR management. Many people tell me, oh, I just go to a payroll company like Fesco, which is very cheap, and they do it for millions and millions of employees, so they know what they're doing. And it's true, Fesco are cheap and they do payroll, but payroll and HR management are 2 different things. HR management is recruiting properly, hiring properly, setting up the contracts properly, and most important, helping to let you go of employees properly. And this is where the most of the expertise comes in. Because Fesco don't really help you to manage the HR, and basically they help you to make the payments, but when things go bad, you're on your own. So when we talk about HR management, there's a lot more than payroll. It's not just paying salaries and social benefits. It's managing people all the way and making sure things are legal, first of all, that all the employees are getting what they deserve, and when things go bad, that you don't suffer too much damages. Same goes for financial management. And many companies tell me, oh, financial management, oh, we just need a bookkeeping. But bookkeeping is not enough because a simple, cheap bookkeeper, he will take the information that you give him and he'll put it in the file and he will submit to the tax office, which is fine. But he will not know if the information is wrong, if the invoices do not make sense. He will not alert you on problems with the warehouse, with the factory, with raw materials. He will not understand if the pricing is right, if you're selling in the right price, and if you're getting your VAT deductions right, if you're getting, if your duties are correct. But there's a lot of elements of financial management that a good financial manager could actually advise you very critical topics that could affect the business dramatically. It's not only about recording in the books and submitting to the tax office, it's overseeing the business from a financial point of view. And this is the difference between financial management and a bookkeeper. The other thing that is super important is to set up work procedures, control mechanism, and make sure that all the employees know all these workflows and that you check that these things are actually happening. One of the most important things is to set up an employee handbook. This is a book that actually collects all the rules of your company that you want them to comply with. And the funny thing is that whatever is not in the contract and is not in a book doesn't actually exist. And a quick funny story, we have a partner who is running a factory, and he found an employee that was sleeping during the shift. And of course, he fired him on the spot, and the employee took him to court, and the judge says, where does it say in the contract or in the employee handbook that he cannot sleep during his work time? And of course, he says, well, it's obvious. It goes without saying, right? He says, no, you never mentioned it. You should have trained him. You should have warned him. You should have practiced it with him. And actually, this employee won, and he won extended compensation. And this was a good lesson for us that everything that you want to say it in the employee handbook. And this is what will be the important document. When things go bad, you need to go back to the employee handbook. So this is very important. Another thing that is very important to do is to conduct periodical audits. We're all very busy, and life in China is really, as you know, it's very dramatic. Things are happening fast. You're always busy. There's always another opportunity. And most of us are busy on the business, on selling, on marketing, on developing the market. Nobody has time to actually go back to see if the work procedure that hopefully we did set up at the beginning, that they're actually working. And we do need to have somebody coming from the outside checking that is actually happening. And this is something I think that most of the foreign companies, and especially foreign managers, are neglecting because we're just too busy. And it's important to conduct operational audits from financial point of view, from HR point of view, from logistic point of view, manufacturing point of view. It's important to bring people that this is what they do, and they point out, look, there's some neglection there, there's some waste there, you could save some money there, and gives some tips to the general manager. I have a client that is coming back to me. He actually was just here last week. Every 3 years, he's coming back to me and he says, come, I need an operational audit. And I admire him. He says, look, just like I go to the dentist every year or two, I come to you. I want you to come and check that things are working as they should. And we go there and we point out a few things and he fixed them, and we go back a few years later. There's always something to say. I must say, every time that we go there, it's always getting better and better. But he wants us to tell him that it's good enough or what needs to be fixed again. And this is super important, and I think that it's very hard for foreign managers to even think of conducting these audits. First, it's not easy for any of us to say, oh, I need some support, I need somebody to check me up. If it's a Chinese manager, of course, he will not feel comfortable that somebody is checking him up. If it's a foreign manager, he will feel embarrassed to ask for a budget for an audit from the head office because they pay him so much money. They say, you need to manage everything. You need to be responsible for everything. And so it's very hard to have the ability to say, I need to stop, I need to check my entity and see how are we operating. But it needs to be done, and it's very important. Another thing which is very important, and we find that it's problematic, that many times the head office is appointing a general manager, whether it's Australian, whether it's Chinese, whether it's Taiwanese, it doesn't really matter, but they expect that this manager will do everything. And everybody's talking to this manager, the head office, the IT, the COO, the CFO, and everybody expects him to have all the answers. And the poor guy is sitting here in China, and he needs to know everything about finance, about HR. He needs to deal with the landlord, with the tax bureau, with the labor bureau, and he has no time to deal with all of this. What we think should be a better way to do it is to have more involvement of the head office managers in what's happening in China. We did a CFO convention a few years ago. I asked, how many of you have visited China? And only one guy visited China. We're about 50 CFOs in the room. I says, why? Do you understand China rules? And he says, no, we are totally lost. I said, so why don't you go there? It's not so expensive to go to China, sit with your CFO, sit with your accountant, and understand why China financial rules are different. And they are different. The accounting are different. The way you record invoices is different. And you as a CFO, how can you not go to China and understand? The reports are different. Everything is different. Same for the CEO, same for the marketing people. Marketing people overseas, they use completely different marketing tools. They need to come to China to understand what is WeChat, what is Weibo, what's happening here in the streets. Just to get the feel of China, you cannot get it if you sit back home and you speak only to the general manager because he speaks good English and you expect him to give you all the answers. And of course, he got the pressure to bring sales and he doesn't have time to do all the other things. So personal involvement of more managers in the headquarters. Normally, there's only one manager in the headquarters, one manager in China, and they communicate together. And the other people don't say, oh, that's a China business. We don't know anything about it. But you should know something about it because the China business could be your major business and affect the entire business. And if China business go bad, maybe the whole business will go bad. So involvement of more and more managers at the headquarters is very, very important.